this will be a specific topic analysis for the February PF topic, which is resolved the United States federal government should ban single-use plastics. So let's start off with the definitions. The United States refers to the United States government. Ban is to eliminate or to get rid of something. The third definition is single-use plastics. It's pretty intuitive. It talks about how plastic material that is used temporarily and thrown away. So you use it once, for example, like bandages or maybe gloves, things that you would use once, or maybe even store-bought bags. And those would be not only holding your own produce, but you would throw it away after you use it once. So that would be a definition of single-use plastics. So let's talk about the AFGround. So notice how the topic says specifically about how the United States should ban single-use plastics. It doesn't say the use of single-use plastics or the production of it, just says ban, meaning that you would get access to a lot of AFGround because that means that not only is the production of single-use plastics going to go away, but no one's going to use it anymore, considering that it's going to get banned and people are not going to be able to use it. So there are a couple of contention ideas for the affirmative. The first is public health. And the reason for this is because many single-use plastics contain very harmful chemicals that pose risk to human health. And I will elaborate this on the next slide. So intuitively, if you think about it, plastics, they may contain very harmful chemicals because they are derived from fossil fuels. So that would not only be harmful for your health, but once the plastics sort of break down, it would obviously leave microplastics in your bloodstream, maybe in your own body, that would be bad for your health. And so the more buildup of those macroplastics you have in your blood, the more harmful it is going to be. And it could even cause other diseases like cancer or other immunodeficiencies. But again, that will be covered on the next slide. The second AF argument you can talk about is environmental concerns. Because single-use plastics take hundreds of years to decompose, that leads to long-lasting harm to ecosystems, wildlife, and marine life, considering that a lot of the trash that we throw away are made up of single-use plastics, but a lot of that trash just goes to the landfill, or maybe it gets dumped in the ocean. So it would have long-lasting environmental hazards. So to review plastic chemicals, inside single-use plastics, there are endocrine disruptors that can cause cancer, immunodeficiencies, and birth defects. I would assume that you can also tie in the notion of environmental racism, considering that a lot of the neighborhoods that are filled with trash, or the neighborhoods that are more prone to getting structurally skewed in terms of trash getting thrown away, or even just developing nations in which the United States should just buys the land and puts the trash on the developing nations' land, a lot of those people that are living near those areas would also be affected by it. But I would assume that the use of single-use plastics would directly harm the buyer of those. For example, if you eat hot soup out of a plastic bag, obviously microchemicals are going to get into your bloodstream. So that would cause immediate harms for you, but it would also could cause harms for other people as well. The second argument, again, to review is environmental concerns. Because many single-use plastics take a long time to decompose, it ends up polluting our oceans, waterways, ecosystems, and killing off our biodiversity. If you imagine the animals that are living in the ocean, for example, a lot of turtles think that plastic bags are jellyfish, so they try to eat the plastic bag. But obviously, it could not only choke them, but it could also kill them as well, meaning that a lot of these animals, they don't know the difference between plastics and a lot of the animals that they usually prey on, so it's going to be harmful. It could even kill off a lot of the species that we care about. And more specifically, single-use plastics can trap heat on the surface of the oceans because if you throw a plastic bag into the ocean, it would just float on top. And if there's a lot of plastics on the top of the ocean, it would just trap more heat because it absorbs heat. It would simultaneously decrease the temperature beneath the surface of the ocean because if there's a lot of trash, a lot of the heat will get deflected off the plastics and not through to the surface, to the bottom of the ocean, meaning that a lot of these species that aren't suited for these ecosystem and climate changes aren't going to be able to adapt to their own conditions, and they might even die because of suddenly increasing temperature or suddenly decreasing temperature. So now let's cover the negative ground under the PF topic. So the first argument you can talk about are economic harms. You can argue that banning these plastics may harm single-use plastic companies that generate significant revenue and hurting workers and livelihoods. I assume that a lot of these companies that rely on getting revenue from single-use plastics are very big companies, considering that a lot of the people in the United States use single-use plastics, meaning that if you can argue for how workers are dependent on single-use plastic companies to generate revenue and for them to get a job, if the ban of single-use plastics were to happen in the world of the affirmative, it would cut off a lot of livelihoods for many workers that depend on the companies to find work. The second argument is food waste. This argument talks about how plastics keep food and water fresh, decreasing food contamination and even waste that may generate more environmental harms than the plastics themselves. And I think a pretty intuitive answer to this argument is probably how, although food contamination directly may just be disposed of in compost, for example, I think that the intuitive negative argument to that is the more food we waste, the more food we have to produce, and then the idea of having to grow more cows or maybe raise them, other produce or livestock, just because we are throwing away all these foods with the lack of single use plastics, that might even generate more environmental harm. So it's not about the direct disposal of the food, but rather it's the notion that we have to keep producing more foods because we're just throwing away more of it. And without single use plastics, we're just going to see a lot of the food just get thrown away in the first place, prompting the need to get more food to be produced. So it creates a cycle of us creating more food waste, which may even be even worse for our environment. And you can probably think of more reasons why that is the case, but the argument could flow on the both aft flow and the neg flow, considering that it can go both sides. So that is the end of the February 2024 public forum debate topic analysis about single use plastics.